Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting of October 19th. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. Be it resolved that the Township of Greater Madawaska Council calls to order the October 19th, 2020 regular council meeting at 2 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Any additions, deletions? We have one excused, do we, Allison? Yes, Councillor Foss is excused. Any additions, deletions? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier, that the agenda of the council meeting of October 19, 2020 be approved as presented. All in favor? Carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. And we have a delegation today. So welcome Sally McIntyre, General Manager of Mississippi Valley Conservation Area. And we'll turn it over to you, Sally.
Great. Thank you very much for hosting me today. I believe most of you have a presentation that was circulated. Would people like me to share my screen? Is there anybody who would appreciate me sharing my screen? Okay, I'm gonna minimize my screen so that I can walk through it with you. The purpose of today is to, first of all, introduce myself. Brian, you and I have met along with some of the staff there at Greater Madawaska. And so I wanted to introduce myself to you as the new GM, give you a bit of an update on some correspondence we shared with you over the summer in which you endorsed, and talk a bit about our strategic plan and the watershed plan that we're working on. So I'm now on slide 3. So I joined MVCA 18 months ago. And Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority comprises lower, I'm going to say quarter portion of Greater Madawaska Township. It's not a huge area of your municipality, but definitely fall within the watershed. At the time that I joined last year, was shortly after the 2018 elections, and so we saw over half the board change. And that resulted in a new chair, vice chair, and committee chairs as well. It was a year of several retirements, so we saw over half of the senior management team leave. So it was going to be a year of transition any way you looked at it. But then, as we all know, in 2019, we had a tremendous flooding event, both on the Ottawa River, Madawaska, as well as the Mississippi River. And there were changes to the Conservation Authority Act. There was changes to the funding we received from the province. And as well, we were informed that further funding structure changes would be coming down the pipe by regulation. So it was quite an exciting year, that first year. So the correspondence I shared with you over the summer was from our board because one of the funding issues that we have is that we own several structures in the watershed, and we depend upon the province for 50% funding on the capital works for those structures. And so the letter we sent was to inform you that we did not receive any funding for 2 major projects that we had been going for this year. And that we had general concerns about the funding envelope the province has set aside that hadn't been changed for many years, as well as the administrative rules associated with the use of those funds. And so first off, I very much want to thank you for endorsing that. Mayor Ron Higgins, from a neighbor of yours, North Frontenac, has been working with me to try to get a meeting with the minister. And hopefully with perhaps 1 or 2 county wardens to go in and talk to them on this issue. Because the fact of the matter is, to the degree that we don't receive funding from the province, puts additional financial burden on our member municipalities. So as a result of the work, associated with trying to get that funding and realizing the vulnerability of our organization and our infrastructure to provincial funding, we've been doing a lot of work on the financial side of things the past few months. And so right now I'm in the midst of doing a priority setting exercise that will help guide the board in making decisions regarding an interim financial plan for the next 3 years. It will be the first time the board has done multi-year budgeting, as well to do an update to our 10-year capital plan. So we'll be sharing that forthcoming. So all of this is, of course, influencing the development of the strategic plan. And in truth, we had wanted to do it last year, but it was just, quite frankly, too onerous a task for last year. And this year, COVID-19 has conspired to make that additionally difficult. So we haven't made the progress on the strategic plan that we'd wanted to, but we are embarking on it this fall now that things have somewhat normalized. So what you see before you is on slide 5 is a list of the various inputs that are going to be used to inform the development of the strategic plan. And in my coming to you today, it's to, again, reestablish relationships, because we don't see much of you due to the the small nature of your element in the watershed, and that your rep is not a council member. So there isn't that direct reporting back that there is on some of the other municipal reps. So definitely I want to engage with Greater Madawaska more so to see what issues you have. We've talked previously about whether or not MVCA could assist Greater Madawaska with some of the flooding issues you're seeing on the Madawaska River as opposed to the Mississippi. And that's still of interest to us going forward. So happy to pursue and support your municipality any way we can on flooding and other hazard related matters. So now I just want to jump into the discussion of the watershed plan. This has been a process we've been working on for a little over a year now. And what I'm showing you here is a profile view of the river, because I like to start with this to give people a sense of the landscape. And what this shows is how much the river drops over 200 kilometers from the upper watershed near Charbot Lake and beyond down to where it discharges to the Ottawa River. And what I like about this profile view on slide 6 is that it shows you that once water enters the system, we're limited in terms of reservoir capacity, the degree to which we can slow or stop the flow. The water, once it's in the river, major tributaries, it's coming down. It's gravity flow, it flows downhill. And what you're seeing on those lakes is illustrating where we have actual storage capacity. We have many more dams, but actually very few reservoirs with meaningful storage capacity. And just by comparison, the one major dam on the Madawaska is equal to 3 times the total volume of storage that we have on this watershed on the Mississippi. So these dams are quite small with limited reservoir capacity. So roughly this past spring, late winter more, we released 4 background documents that we prepared for the watershed plan that sort of set the stage for what we know about the watershed. And those are the 4 topics there: physical environment, people and property, natural systems, and assets. And these are sort of statements of fact about what we know about the watershed and trends we're seeing on the watershed. And they were shared with all the member municipalities as well as the province and the feds for comment to make sure that we were dealing with all the same factual information. Now, we had shared these with the public, but our timing couldn't have been worse, as I think we released these the week before the pandemic state of emergency was announced. So we're going to be re-releasing them this fall in the hopes that more people will become aware of the project and become familiar with some of the issues arising on the watershed. So one of the things I wanted to do right now is just walk you through very quickly the last document, which is this asset management one, because it speaks to the connection between municipal assets and conservation area assets. So this first slide on slide 8 illustrates different types of dams that we have on the watershed. The one in the upper left is the largest dam, and it's actually owned by Ontario Power Generation. We operate it for them. They direct the operations. We just have the people on the ground who physically go out and do the work. It is a power generation station there, but interestingly enough, the reservoir capacity behind that dam is actually quite small. It just happens to benefit from a tremendous drop in elevation at that site. Unfortunately, most people think, when they think about dams, of that size of dam and that kind of capacity, whereas the one on the upper right is much more typical of the type of dams that the MVCA owns and operates. So you can see there's a fantastic difference in scale and capacity between the two. The photo on the lower right is actually a road crossing. And though we don't typically think of road crossings as dams, they actually function the same as any other dam where you have a constriction or stricture on a waterway. It is under legislation considered a dam. And so if you look at the illustration on the bottom left, it illustrates that whether it's a dam or a road crossing, you have some sort of limitation on flow and a limitation that's going to cause water upstream to back up and potentially flood or overtop if it's not managed properly. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important when municipalities and counties are doing road works and road planning, that they liaise with MVCA to make sure that we can properly assess potential flood risks associated with the potential work. So of this nature, as well, work on drains and ditches, the introduction of new enlargements of them, etc. These are also points of connection between the natural water courses that largely feed our systems and your infrastructure. So it's making the connection between what we're known to be managing and what you're known to be managing, and making sure that we're collaborating wherever possible to make sure that at minimum we're aware of the works you're doing, so that if there are potential risks of flooding associated with it, we can inform you. But secondarily, so that we can update our mapping so that when we're doing overall flood risk analysis, that we're aware and up to date with what infrastructure you have in place. So this next slide 10, is a repeat of the earlier one, but you'll see I have all this vegetation in the background. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because when we do our floodplain mapping and modeling, fully 60% of the precipitation that lands on the watershed is taken up by natural vegetation and ground infiltration. And we emphasize this because part of our role as Flood and Hazard Management Authority is to mitigate impacts on natural storage capacity within the watershed. It's not a do not touch, but it's really important to recognize that to the degree that we remove natural vegetation and we fill wetlands and forests, etc., it actually will increase the amount of water hitting the riverine system and increase the risk of flooding. 60% is a significant amount of water to be held within those natural systems. I just want to draw your attention to the last bullet there where it mentions low impact development. This is a term used to describe something that many of us are familiar with over the years. It's simple things like infiltration pits, swales, rain barrels. They're anything that can slow the flow, the rate at which water is hitting the riverine system, and therefore mitigating the potential impact of erosion and flooding on the system. So my last slide here just is to highlight to you the process that we're going through and opportunities for consultation with yourselves and the public at large. So as noted, we started this process last fall, fall 2019, and we established a public advisory committee. And I have to say they've been a terrific group to work with. They represent folks from across the watershed and different sectors of the economy. So we have forestry represented, we have developers on the committee, we have fisher, recreational organizations and the like. So it's been a great group, and they helped us in the development of those backgrounders that I showed you, and are currently working with us on the development of a discussion paper. And this discussion paper is to take those issues that were identified in the backgrounders and ask ourselves collectively, what do we want to do about that? What sort of options do we have going forward? Of course, when you're looking at options, you look at starting with what are we doing today and what's working, not working? Do we want to continue to do it? But then also a host of other things that we might consider doing, not just MVCA, but other municipalities, because as I illustrated to you, folks have a huge role in water management within your watershed, the watershed, as well as the province, both MECP and MNRF, as well as the feds. So the discussion paper is going to be looking at a whole host of options, both for ourselves and others. But at the end of the day, it's going to zero in primarily on what we MVCA can do. But because it's a discussion paper, it's looking at the whole breadth of issues, because often people want us as MVCA to do things that quite frankly aren't in our mandate to do. And so this discussion paper is a tool to help illustrate, if you're wanting somebody to do something, who's the best organization to approach about it. So we're looking to have that completed over the winter months and to release it in the spring for broad consultation. And in the meantime, we'll definitely be circulating your staff for review and comment and coming back to you again for any issues you want to discuss with us further. So that's my presentation for today. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Seeing none. Sally, when we met the last time, I think you met with Luc Desjardins and myself, and one of the things we had talked about was mapping, because we had just gone through the flooding. And Luc, can you remind me, I don't think that we have got any further on getting our hands on any mapping or any improved mapping that would show the levels, you know, that would help us in the time of a flood. Do you know if we have been successful in getting...
Ms. McIntyre and us, we had exchanged some correspondence about that. And I don't think, I think it maybe the conversation just trailed off a little bit, but happy to discuss with her further.
If I may, we are looking to obtain LiDAR data, which is elevation data, that will allow us to do, like we don't have floodplain mapping for the upper part of the Mississippi watershed, much like you don't have floodplain mapping for large swaths of the Madawaska. So the three CAs, ourselves, Rideau Valley and South Nation, are looking to put a proposal together to the feds under the stimulus funding. And so this was something I was potentially going to speak to you about, was would you be interested in partnering on that initiative? Because we're hoping through collaborating, you know, over a large area that we'll be able to get funding discount, like not funding discount, a discounted pricing to have the LiDAR flown, as well as obviously the funding from the feds. So, I mean, no decision needs to be made here today, obviously, but if that's something that would interest you, because that's the first step in doing floodplain mapping, is having good elevation data.
Well, we're certainly interested in taking a look at it. I don't know what kind of cost is involved, but it would have been very helpful the last time, especially when we had major flooding in the Griffith area, if we had elevation mapping that would show if the water goes up a half a foot, you know, what area has to be notified and so on. So if you're getting into that, perhaps you could reach out to Mr. Desjardins on it and keep us part of it. Yeah,
I'll reach out, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. So before we move to facilities, our Councillor Frost, we have a resolution here because he is perhaps going to be away for a couple months of council meetings due to a health concern. So I have a resolution that I'll read, moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. resolution that Councillor John Frost be excused from the council meetings of October 19th and November 16th, 2020. All in favor?
Mayor Hunt, can you please, I believe the motion is being moved by Councillor McPherson, and he's had to leave the meeting for a few moments. So could you please?
Okay, so moved by Councillor Rigglehoff and seconded by Councillor Perry that Councillor John Frost be excused in the council meeting of October 19th and November 16th. All in favor? Carried. And moving to facilities, first issue is, or item is Calabogie Community Hall. And so the background on this is with the building of the actual rink and then in turn the building of the rink roof over the top of the rink. Gentleman by the name of Dan O'Neill was very instrumental in.
Sorry, Mayor, I believe you jumped over the first item, the 4.10.1. The Calabogie Community Hall.
I'm sorry. Okay, I don't have a resolution on that.
No, it's an information item.
Okay.
So this is just to advise council that the Calabogie Community Hall, which we have an agreement with the Calabogie Lions Club, will remain closed. Now, this has affected an exercise class that is run by a third party on behalf of the Lynn. They've been able to secure location at St. Andrews, and I've agreed that we would pay the rent for the remainder of the year, which is, I believe, $40 a week, and then we will review the situation in December.
Okay. So that's an information item. Is there any
Yes.
questions regarding that? Seeing none, I'll move to the item that I was in such a rush to get to. So Mr. Dan O'Neill was instrumental in getting us going on building the roof and so on, and has been a great contributor through the 7 years that we've been trying to pay off that debt. Unfortunately, this spring, Mr. O'Neill had a heart attack and has passed away. In appreciation for all that he's done with us and the fact that he's made it possible for us to have the facility, we took out a loan 10 years ago, and with the O'Neill's family help, as well as many other contributors, but he was the big one, he and his family, and that the rink committee has made a request of, or is making a request of council that the rink be named after him. So I'm going to read the resolution moved by Councillor Rigglehoff and seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approves the Calabogie rink be named the Dan O'Neill Memorial Arena effective immediately. Is there any questions or concerns regarding that? Seeing none, so all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the next item is this February, in time for our annual hockey tournament, Linwood, and in particular, Chris and Julie Fleming donated a scoreboard, and this had a cost to it of somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000. So the committee at that point did not have enough money to put up the scoreboard, but it was badly needed for our tournaments. Anyway, so Chris and Julie generously donated the scoreboard, but one of the requests was that the Linwood name be on the scoreboard, and be left there. So the resolution is moved by Councillor Rigglehoff, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approves the Linwood name remain on the scoreboard that was generously donated by Chris and Julie Fleming of Linwood Generation 3. All in favor? Carried. And Eagle's Nest parking. So this is an information item as well. Do you want to speak to that, Allison?
Sure. So as we are all aware, there's been a large increase in popularity of the Eagle's Nest hiking trail. And to combat that, we staff have brought forward and council has approved that parking only occur on one side and that the lights be installed for pedestrians crossing 508 in collaboration with the county. However, the popularity continues and this further steps need to be taken. So attached to the memo is a rough outline of what we're proposing as a work plan. So the planner or the manager of planning and development has been in contact with the county to see about some parking opportunities that may exist in collaboration with our public works supervisor. So it's very preliminarily on, but we are aware of the situation and we are looking for solutions to address this. But as you may or may not be aware, we don't actually own any property in this area. So it's to get a working relationship with both the county and the MNRF so that we are able to construct such a parking lot that would address the concerns.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll just add a little. We get a number of requests at the township level and both councillors and myself about, you know, having our bylaw enforced and being more proactive in taking care of the Eagle's Nest. So as the CAO mentioned, we did reach out to the county, got parking restricted to one side of the road. But as far as the trail itself, we have no control over it. As a matter of fact, in the spring at the time of that COVID hit us hard and the trail was being used excessively, we looked at closing it for a period of time just so we could contain the amount of traffic that was coming to the community. And we were not allowed to close it. We did put up some barricades and we're told by the MNR that we're not allowed and we were asked to take those down. So there is very little control that the township has over the property. And also, as mentioned by the CAO, the land on the other side of the road is partially owned by the county and the remainder is owned by the MNR. So in order for us to do anything, we have to reach out, get approval from these bodies. So it is a very difficult situation to address, and it's quite time consuming. We've been on this for a while, but we're starting to get some traction. But just as a notice, and any of the councillors that are dealing with ratepayers throughout the township, they need to understand, you know, that we are pretty restricted in what we can do up there. We have to gain approvals from these other boards and so on. So just that everybody is aware, you know, the difficulties that, or the challenges that we're dealing with here, but hopefully we're with the process that has been set out by our manager of land use and planning, that we will end up with a parking lot and then be able to restrict parking on Highway 508 completely would be my wish, because it is very dangerous. So we are working towards that end, and hopefully we can get some other bodies to share the costs of the parking lot that needs to be erected so that we bring safety to the people that are using the trails. Okay. And I don't think there's, Charles, is there anything further there as far as an update or?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to Public Works. Tender 15-2020 ditching, clearing, grubbing of Bridges Road. So there was a tender put out for ditching on the road. The tender results are attached, and the recommendation from our Public Works supervisor is that the tenders be rejected as it is too expensive. So moved by Councillor Rigglehoff and seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council rejects all bids received for tender 15-2020 ditching, clearing, and grubbing of Bridges Road. All in favor? Carried.
And just a further note on that, the Public Works Supervisor does hope that this work can be completed this fall, but in-house.
Yes. So the next one is a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking within the Township of Greater Madawaska. Would you like to speak to that, Allison, first? Or?
Sure. So there was a ratepayer who reached out to Township staff with concerns over parking on 511 between Mill Street and Madawaska Street. Quite often there's parking on both sides of the highway, and it has the curve in it and other roads coming to meet 511. So the Public Works Supervisor has drove this road, taking into consideration the request as well as the traffic concerns, and the recommendation put forward is that to not permit parking between Mill Street and Madawaska Street on 511.
Okay, and just further to that, we also have had complaints over the last year, traffic coming south on 511, so making the turnover by the school. If two trucks are meeting there and there is parking on the side of the road, they actually cannot pass, especially any ones with a logging truck with a pup attached and so on. So there's been a number of incidents where people have had difficulty and had to back up to get around that corner. So Public Works, when they did the review, were very well aware of the problem because some of the drivers have had challenges with it as well. So that has brought it forward. So I open it up to questions or concerns. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take it again, as it being a county road, we've sought and received permission to post no parking?
So the process is the same as it was for the county for 508. We have to send them a bylaw and then they'll take it into consideration.
Oh, okay.
So this is the bylaw that we're passing now that will be forwarded on. So moved by Councillor Rigglehoff, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approves bylaw 70-2020 to amend bylaw 49-2020, being the parking lot bylaw, to add to County Road 511, known as Lanark Road, to Schedule A, to prohibit parking on both east or west sides between Mill Street and Madawaska Street at all times. And furthermore, that council directs staff to notify the County of Renfrew of this decision, and that staff erect no parking signs on this section of County Road 511. All in favor? You seem to have frozen up, Lucy. Are you in favor of this motion?
She put her hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
yeah, the issue seems to be with your device for some reason.
okay.
It was with mine as well.
Okay, so that motion is passed. Bylaw 71-2020, off-road vehicles. Allison, do you want to speak to that as well?
So this is an item that was addressed in 2015 that permitted off-road vehicles to be able to operate on township-owned roads. So since, as it's noted in the report, there's been changes to the legislation to allow further items or further vehicles to be added. So I'm not quite sure what if a vehicle is an all-terrain vehicle, a multi-purpose of off-highway utility vehicle or recreational off-highway vehicle. So they are now permitted. This falls in line with what the county is doing, because that was a question that was put forward, is if we didn't have a bylaw that was in line with the county, that they could only go so far within our municipality until they couldn't go any further. So this is in line with what the county has proceeded with as well.
Thank you. So I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Rigglehoff, seconded by Councillor Perry. The council rescinds bylaw 38-2015, being a bylaw to regulate the operation of off-road vehicles on municipal roads, and further, the council approves bylaw 71-2020, being a bylaw to regulate the operation of off-road vehicles on municipal roads. All in favor? Carried. And the capital works program.
So council will see that there are a number of projects that are done. So Pheasant Run is completed. Spindle Drift, unfortunately, we are not able to do the surface treatment this year. It is scheduled for early 2021. I don't have exact dates. I do have some time scheduled with the Public Works Supervisor later this week to get a better idea. I don't believe I will get a specific date. It will depend on the supplier and their supplier. Pine Street in Griffith is complete other than the surface treatment. This is a road that's in the Griffith subdivision that they wanted to let settle because they had to go so deep to remove old material. So it was brought forward to council that they leave this road until 2021. That's the same for Ginza Street, Eastern Avenue, St. Joseph Street, and Main Street. Pucker Street is completed, and the Berry Barrel culvert, while it's been replaced, there's some concerns that the Public Works Supervisor is following up with regard to the surface treatment that was put down. So this will be coming back until we have an idea of when that's completed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to environmental grinding at McDonald. So moved by Councillor Rigglehoff and seconded by Councillor Perry. The council award tender PW 14-2020 grinding at Blackdonald and Mount St. Patrick landfills to Glenview Iron and Metal of Smith Falls for a total of $23,730, HST included. All in favor? Carried. And I don't think we have any update there. So protection services, fire department quarterly report. Daryl, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. So this is our information item that just shows the last 3 months we've had in the fire service. Our numbers are down, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, August was really down, huh?
Whatever last year, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. And North Frontenac automatic aid agreement extension. Allison, would you like to speak to that one, or Darrell?
I believe our fire chief will speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
So we have an agreement for North Frontenac up at Mountain Chute, and they're just looking to extend it again. So the way the agreement works is we receive a standby fee for all the values that are up there. And then we also get compensated for if we're up there actually fighting the fire. They're just looking to extend it. We are going to look to a longer agreement next year sometime.
Okay, moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. Whereas Clause 7D of the automatic aid agreement states the agreement may be extended by mutual consent of the parties indicated by an appropriate resolution and extension agreement being duly passed and executed by both parties hereto. Therefore, be it resolved that Council approves the extension agreement for automatic aid between the Township of North Frontenac and the Township of Greater Madawaska expiring on June 13th, 2021. All in favor? Carried. And Planning Department building permit report to September 30th. Darrell, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yep, thank you. So again, this is an information item. It shows you how we've been going actually quite well. We are ahead of last year at this time, so we're doing quite well.
Yeah. Now I see where last year, the next October was a big month. How is October going this year?
It's looking pretty good, and I just see I got a couple more houses come in, so I think the numbers are going to be comparable.
Okay, so the year
ends, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And 810-2 zoning bylaw, commercial cannabis cultivation. Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking from council for direction to pass a zoning amendment to restrict commercial cannabis production. Some municipalities are getting surprised if these operations pop up, and without appropriate land use controls in place, then we don't have any ability to stop these in undesirable locations or to help neighbors. So my bylaw proposes to prohibit these land uses within the municipality. And should somebody wish to begin operating a commercial cannabis operation, then they would come to the township office with the application for zoning amendments. And by that process, then we can give due public notice and put them through an evaluation. But without this in place, then they can go up without our control.
Okay, any questions or concerns of council on that? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approves the giving of notice and holding of a public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit the commercial cultivation of cannabis on all land within the township. All in favor? Carried. And bylaw amendment, shipping containers. Again, Mr. Desjardins.
Yeah, thank you. We had, with council, I had previously discussed this matter, and we had I had met with council on a few occasions to try to refine a bylaw to regulate shipping containers. It was understood that was it was desirable to have some rules in place for where shipping containers can be placed on primarily residential properties, and so everything was set to move forward. And as per the Planning Act and zoning amendments, you have to have public meetings and give notice first, and then have a public meeting. But then COVID came around, and I wasn't sure about having a public meeting for to move a bylaw forward. But at this time, I think we should. I think it's maybe time to move forward, and we would give notice. I understand if council, it was quite a few months ago that we had worked on this bylaw, but it's attached in the package. I won't give notice right away, but I'm looking to move forward with giving notice. And so if there's small adjustments that need to be made to the proposed bylaw, it's still fair game, but I would like to get something in place in the near future.
Okay. Questions or concerns from council? Councillor McPherson.
So Luke, in terms of the public meeting, how will that be handled?
It'll have to be a Zoom meeting.
All right. And does that mean people will have to register in advance, or Or will we open it up so that it's available for anybody to access?
I believe, I'd look to Allison, but I believe I have to share the Zoom link. So I ask people in my notice, I have a new, well, I've beefed up our notices to spell out the process. But I think I emphasize that I appreciate written comments prior to the meeting. It's easier that way. But also if people want to be involved, then I think I have to share with them directly the Zoom link so that they can access.
All right. Overall, I think that it's from what I can see, it looks like a reasonable compromise
Yeah.
in order to allow some degree of flexibility, but yet managing in particular that the idea of having something stuck out in the front of a lot.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is we're just gonna have some screening so that they're tucked away.
Further questions? Councillor Perry, did you have your hand? No. Okay. Okay, thank you. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perry. The council supports the attached draft bylaw, which proposes to regulate the use of shipping containers and direct staff to proceed with the giving of notice and holding of a public meeting. All in favor? Carried. Finance admin, September finance update.
So the updates up to month end of September. As noted in the report, the operating revenues and expenses are very similar to the reporting back for the end of August. I've adjusted in the operating the budgetary control report the extraordinary income for COVID to reflect revenues against expenses to net out to what's been used out of the COVID funding. So at this point, there's a projected surplus of around 98,000. And then when it comes to capital works, I've added some columns to provide more status updates. So there's projects are being identified as being completed and closed with a surplus or deficit, identified as being a multi-year project or not proceeding in 2020 due to review in the project. So when you're looking at the reports, you could see that the projects, there's a column for projected, and then the surplus and deficit are projects that have been completed. And then in the status column, I've added just multi-year projects, or Allison had outlined that there's some surface treatments that will proceed in 2021. So at this point, we're looking at a surplus of about 185,000 on the capital side. Some of these invoices are still coming in, therefore, it could go either way, but that's what we're looking at this point.
Councillor Perry.
Just have a question for you, Renee. Like I'm not the finance expert by any stretch, but what's the difference between 2020 budget and 2020 projection?
The budget is the approved budget for the year, and projection is where do we think we're going to be at the end of the year in actual expenditures and revenue.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions on that? Okay, thank you, Renee. And the next item is bylaw 69/2020. Renee, would you like to speak to that first, or?
Yeah, sure. So this is just to appoint the auditors for this year's audit, which begins at the beginning of November for procedural. I seen that in September of last year, we had went to council to just appoint for another year and then go to RFP due to change in staffing. We didn't end up going to RFP, but it's at this point with the leg project, it's allowed us to review going into 2021, having going out to RFP together with other municipalities, which may assist in some savings compared to us going alone. So for this year, as we're closing off the year, I'm looking to appoint or council to appoint McKilkins and Associates, which has been our auditors for some years, and then the review in 2021 for a 5-year audit services.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Seeing none, moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approved bylaw 69/2020 to appoint McGilligan and Associated Chartered Professional Accountants as the municipal corporation auditors for the 2020 year. All in favor? Carried. And clerk receptionist position, Renee.
So back, I believe, yes, in August, I had brought to council a review of the junior accountant job description but prior to posting, and I had mentioned that some of the pieces, the financial pieces, were being removed from the position to allow for some segregation of duties and increase in internal controls. This is the review of the other positions. So this is a clerk receptionist position. As we are a smaller office, we only have a few to allow for internal controls and segregation of duties to make sure that's in place, and cross training and some backup for business continuity. So this change makes it a bit more official. Right now we're recommending that the compensation backdates. This is due to the person in the position has been doing the works this year. So with gaps in the positions and just the requirement for internal controls, this has been somewhat in place already. This is just making it official, and therefore we reviewed with the Pay Equity Committee, and this is how it came forward.
Okay. Yes, I believe this position, from the point of hiring of a receptionist, the person in this position has taken on a number of tasks. The website, emergency management, she's back up for that as well. So there's a number of duties have been added, as well as what our treasurer has changed the role to today. So any questions of council on this? Seeing none, moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council approved the additions to the clerk receptionist job description that would create a new job position titled Finance Clerk, placed on the compensation grid at Group 3, Step 1, and effective January 1st, 2020. All in favor? Carried. Equipment required for electronic meetings. Allison, are you handling this? Or?
Yes. So previously I had asked council for approval to spend $25,000 on equipment required for electronic meetings. That quote was based, I received without the provider assessing the audio equipment that we had. The audio equipment we've spent an insignificant amount of money on. It was just an attempt by the facilities manager early in 2015 to look at options for audio in council chambers. However, as a result of the provider reviewing what we had and determining it was not adequate, the quote has been revised. So I'm asking that instead of $25,000, that council approve up to $65,000 be permitted to proceed with purchasing the required equipment. So the audio and the other items such as a TV and microphones and such, that we could actually have audio or a hybrid electronic meeting, so that some members may be in council chambers and some may not.
And can you also speak to where this money would come from?
So this money could come from, there's two available sources that we have. So it would not be, I'm not proposing it comes from taxation at all. There is modernization money that we received back in 2019. We received $607,000. And then in 2020, we received $166,000 from COVID. We haven't spent either amount. We spent a small amount of the modernization and a small amount of the COVID. So we're hoping that we can utilize it from the COVID. We're still looking in to seek clarity if that's a possibility, but if not, the modernization fund is available.
Okay, and lastly, could you speak to the fact, are we able to do this without going to RFP?
So I'm requesting that council sole source this. So I did check with other municipalities, and every municipality has sole source who has proceeded with purchasing electronic or proceeding with the equipment required for electronic meetings have sole source and have sole source to this individual.
Okay, so questions of council. Councillor McPherson.
So you sort of just answered my question with that final statement, but I guess I'm just kind of surprised that the audio portion would more than double it's about a what is it, about 120 or 125% increase from the original, and I realize it was a draft quote. So increasing by $40,000 is quite a substantial increase from the original quote of 25. Are we confident that we're getting again, the fact that we're sole sourcing it, are we getting value for our money? And just because other municipalities have used this same provider is not a good reason to move ahead. And do we know what other municipalities are being charged? Are they getting something similar, and are the costs basically the same? I guess the concern I have is, regardless of where the money comes from, we still have to do our due diligence and make sure that that the money it's money well spent, and the amount being spent is appropriate for the services being received.
So yes, the amount that is being spent is comparable to other municipalities. It varies, some's higher, some's lower, but that's just the makeup of the facility and what they already had, if they were able to use some of the existing resources they had available or not. So in our case, we're not. With regard to if we're getting value for our money, I spent a significant amount of time with the individual along with the facilities manager, and I'm comfortable after having that discussion that it will meet our requirement, it will meet our needs, and it will meet our needs for any number of things. So not just electronic meetings for council. There's an opportunity to record training so that future employees could watch the training. There's an opportunity for fire meetings. So there's more than just one purpose for this equipment. I can see a lot of opportunities for it once it was in place. The emergency that we was declared in 2017 with the flood, that we could have used this information then. It could have been a council meeting, it could have been live streamed, so anyone anywhere could have seen it, as opposed to only those in attendance at the Griffith Hall. So the system that is provided is a hybrid, that it is mobile, so that it could be transported and set up in a different hall.
And don't get me wrong, I think this is a great step forward. It's absolutely, I think, extremely important that we move ahead with technology and be able to have other means of holding meetings other than having people sitting in council chambers, or in this case, using Zoom, but that we have the appropriate infrastructure in place to support a meeting where a councillor is unable to attend in person and everybody else is sitting in council chambers. Zoom doesn't work in that situation. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to take advantage of that if and when the time requires.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any further questions? Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perry. The council approves the sole source of equipment required for electronic meetings to Combi Tech to be increased from 25,000 to not more than 65,000, including HST. All in favor? Carried. Economic development. So there's EORN presentation that was made to Renfrew County is included in your package. So all the details are there. If we choose to have EORN come to council to do a presentation, Lisa said that she would make herself available via Zoom to answer questions of council. So if you went, I presume everyone has gone through the package. So on the cellular, they're still waiting on the RFPs to be awarded. So we don't at this point have a further update. Greater Madawaska, you know, needs were addressed there, but it depends on the suppliers where they choose to put cell towers and so on. So their response to the RFP. So once those are evaluated, well, then we can have more information, and that might be the time to have EORN come back and do a presentation to us. The other one was on the 5010, and they're moving to a gigabyte. I guess in discussions, EORN had discussions with ministers, and they are saying, well, going with the 5010, which we'd be very happy to have within our municipality, they're suggesting, although the cost is quite a bit more, that you look at going to the gigabyte, and that that would handle us for a number of years down the road. So the ministries are suggesting that this is the way to go, and EORN is ready to put in an application if the government opens it up. So they're kind of waiting on the CRTC and so on. I've been assured in the meetings at the county that all of the needs of Greater Madawaska have been addressed. And the way they've done it this time is if there's an address registered with MPAC, so basically they get a tax bill, well, that means that it will be that that address is listed, and it's listed whether they have service or whether they don't. So they're very confident that they have got all the gaps addressed and that they know where these are. And this is, I think, much better than the old hexagon thing where they looked and said, you know, you either had service within the hexagon area or you didn't. Now they're actually gone down to actual addresses. And so they've been in discussion with CRTC on this. So they have a better plan for getting, recognizing where there is coverage and where there isn't. With a lot of our municipality, you know, there isn't, is much larger. They're trying to reach the 95% coverage. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean by municipality. So I stress for them that Greater Madawaska, we want to ensure that we're part of the 95 and not the 5 that isn't, doesn't have coverage. So unfortunately, this is a very slow moving process, and the big weight is on CRTC to open up and provide funding on it. The other thing is you've probably read in the papers where the Musk satellite, you know, adventure, well, it's been approved by the CRTC. Rainey has filed an application, excuse me. She's filed an application for us to be part of a beta test site for this. So we're hoping that if something comes out of that, you know, we've taken the steps to let them know that we're interested if any service is going to be provided in that manner. Okay, so I'll open it up to questions if there is any, and if not, we'll accept this as information. Okay. And community health, community parks, library board resignation. So we had a resignation in the library board moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council accepts the resignation of Andrina Butler from the Greater Madawaska Public Library Board. All in favor? Carried. And moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perry, the council approves the appointment of Patty MacArthur to serve as on the Greater Madawaska Public Library Board. All in favor? Thank you. And minutes approval. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to provide some information to council with regards to the Calabogie Lions Santa Claus Parade. They will not be having a parade this year. However, they're going to have an alternative community event. There's been some information on Facebook about this. It's called Let's Light Up the Bogey Nights, and residents are encouraged to decorate for Christmas the first week of December. So I'm sure there will be more information coming forward, but it's just I wanted council to be aware. So if you're asked about the Santa Claus Parade in Calabogie, it is canceled.
Okay. And moved by Councillor Councillor McPherson. Glenn, you're muted.
There, we'll try it again. It was off mute. I realize that having had to have stepped out of the meeting for a few minutes, I maybe missed the point where I would have liked to have raised a concern. So I've been on council now for 6 years, and in that 6-year period, constituents in Ward 3 have complained, and quite often bitterly, about Madawaska Road. And I've always given them the explanation that it's a large municipality, we have lots of roads, and it just takes time to work through all of those roads and ensure that they're all up to the standard that is reasonable and acceptable. I also realize that the what I refer to as the upper portion of Madawaska Road, so from Centennial Lake Road to Frontenac Road, is slated for resurfacing in 2021, and I also recognize the fact that that is moved up from where it had originally been in the asset management plan. What I need to do, though, at this point in time, I need to raise concerns about the other half of the road. It is in atrocious shape. It is getting worse by the day. It isn't getting the attention that maybe it did previously, or maybe it just needs more attention now, and the roads crew just can't keep up with it. It is potholes all there. I don't want to say it's falling apart. Let's just put it that way. It's not in good shape. It's going to take a ton of effort to keep it even serviceable. Right now, it would take days for all of the potholes that have developed with the rain and et cetera to be filled in. And of course, the larger they get, then they don't last. Even when they do get filled in, that you lose that fill very quickly because of the size of the pothole. On Saturday, I just happened to be outside and I heard a rumbling, and I thought it was a transport truck or something like that. And so I stood there and watched, and the motorcycles started to go by the front of my home. There were 56 motorcycles. So getting out for an end of season cruise. And the thought that came to mind was not, hey, that's fantastic, that's amazing. It was, I just hope that nothing happens on this road when that group of motorcycles is traveling through, because it is not safe. And so I'm going to start making noise about this. I haven't in the past. I'm going to. I've got 2 years left on this term, and that stretch of road needs to be addressed. I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know how we get creative to do it, but it will not last for another 2, 3, 4 years. It is in bad shape. And so I appreciate the fact that the one half of the road is being addressed, but the entire stretch of Madawaska Road from Centennial Lake Road all the way through to the boundary is becoming not only just terrible to drive on, it is becoming dangerous because of the condition of the road.
Okay.
Just wanted to get that on record.
Allison.
So just a couple items, so just so you're aware, Councillor McPherson. One is the asset management plan is slated to be redone. So that I expect will change where all roads are falling, how it's been assessed. So that's one item to consider, because I know there are sections that, based on the current asset management plan, has it out further than it should be. I understand that. I agree with that. The second item is I've had very preliminary discussions with the CAO from North Frontenac, because we do share a stretch of Madawaska Road, to just put a feeler out to see if there's interest on doing a joint effort, because that is such a long stretch of road, so that if it's something that could be shared, or even a portion of that might be a possibility. It was very preliminary, so I'm not making promises, but it could be an option. And then further to that is, if we can reach an agreement to do a capital project together, there are, for grant opportunities, that is seen as very favorable.
Right. And by the way, and thank you for mentioning the asset management plan, because I am aware that it is being worked or will be worked on, and obviously adjustments will get made. So again, it's our roads crew does a great job. There's no criticism of the work that they do or what they accomplish. It's just sometimes things go a little differently than we expect or forecast, and I think this is one area where definitely it's going to require some creative thinking.
Do we know where this stretch of road is today on the asset management plan?
Pieces of it are out 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so it's broke up into various segments that all needs to be reviewed, and I've had those early discussions with the public works supervisor, and he agrees that it doesn't make sense, some of the small segments that are proposed. So again, it's going to be looked at, and I know that's great for me to say, but it is definitely going to be reviewed. And I do like the treasurer nodding her head in agreement that we are going to look at all that and have it assessed and reprioritized.
Thank you. Okay, anything further on that?
Councillor Rigelhoff had a comment.
No, I was just going to suggest, I didn't see this on the agenda, that it could have been brought forward to the Roads Committee Management meeting for discussion as such, but that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll turn to the minutes approval. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by Council: September 21st, 2020 regular Council meeting, and furthermore, the Council accepts the following minutes: October 1st, 2020 Calabogie Community Rink Committee. All in favor? Carried. And moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Perrier. The council meeting of October 19th, 2020 at 4:13 p.m. enter into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act regarding litigation or possible litigation, Bluff Point Drive, KMP easement, and B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal and local board employee, annual staff assessment. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So Sean will be moving into closed.